thank you so much. I'm very proud to be. Oh, well, they're already here. Okay, I was going to call you. So Neo is back, and we're also very excited to have the actress that plays Ming, Shina Peng. You brought your fan club as well? Sorry? You brought your fan club? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask a few questions to start, and then we can open it up to the audience. So you mentioned in the introduction that it's really a film about friendship that you worked on for many, many years. And I was wondering, in the art of the friendship that you're like talking about, which is really in the film, the friendship between Ko and Yuta, how did you think about the way they bounce back from each other? How did you create each character to work against the other one when they're together and when they're also in the larger group?
Yeah, I think being in a group setting for these individuals are a lot easier sometimes, because whenever you're together, you have to kind of face the other person and confront them with some, like, you know, if you've developed thoughts about your relationship with them in particular, then it's really hard to ignore that when you're kind of one-to-one. So in situations where Yuta and Ko are apart from the group, I think those are the moments when things become really tense for them. And so it's really important for Yuta's character to kind of keep the group together the whole time, because that's really where his life is and his family is, you know.
And since you're here as well, it would be great to hear from your perspective when you were playing as part of the group, and how you could identify with the character you're playing with Ming, and what Neo let you bring to the part.
I mean, honestly, Neo came up to me and was like, I don't know, we met in New York through a friend, and he was like, I'm looking for a Taiwanese kid who's born and raised in Japan, and we're shooting in Kobe, and my background is that I'm Taiwanese, born and raised in Japan, and I actually grew up in Kobe. There's a lot of coincidences, and I do photography, so to be honest, it wasn't really that hard to relate to her. I think she's a much more secure and cooler version of who I was when I was 18. She's like, I don't know, she knows what she's doing. She's got her life figured out, and I think, but like, it wasn't hard to fall into this character and these friendships, because I was in a setting with people, like a setting that I grew up with. My best friend was on set with me taking pictures, and I've known her since I was 7. She's actually out there somewhere. And like, yeah, she's my fan club. And it was easy, but also the guys are so sweet. I think Neo did his magic and figured out a way of making all 5 of us kind of just fall in love with each other, you know, and become friends. And you know, it wasn't an easy part, but it was a natural part in the sense that she was a character that felt so close to home, and it meant the world to be able to portray her in Japanese, because you don't see that in Japanese media a lot.
So the way you built the group also, can you talk a little bit about when you were writing the group and then when you ended up casting the group? Because there's a lot of diversity in the character, in the way they are portrayed as well, and in the way they act, and the way they internalize their issues, and the way they act out.
Yeah. I mean, it was really kind of a miraculous casting process, because I barely changed the characters at all from what I was writing. And all of the decisions to cast, like Shina and everybody else, they were all really like instinctual. They were all kind of like love at first sight almost. Like I decided I would really trust my gut instinct for the casting. And so the casting process took a really long time, because basically we would go through like hundreds of people, and nobody would be the perfect person. And then
except for Shina.
Except for Shina, of course. But also the rest of the group as well. Like the moment Hayato Kurihara, who plays Yuta, walks into the room, I was like, this is him. Like I know it. and just in case we like checked if he could act and stuff, and he could, and he was really great. And
the casting in Kobe or
no, we did it in
everywhere?
Tokyo mostly, and yeah, really miraculously, so many of the people that kind of we had this gut reaction to, also exhibited similar like backstories or characteristics as the characters that were already on the page. So that was miracle number one. But then, as Shina was saying, number two was that they all got along really well with each other, and a big part of what I knew before shooting was that I needed them to develop a rapport, because the most important thing for the film was to make it believable that they were already friends for a very long time, since childhood. And so, I was hoping that they would like at least, develop a rapport, maybe like start to be friends by the first scene. But by the time we were shooting, they were like so tight, like really close to each other. And then over the course of shooting the film, they became such good friends to the point that now the actors who play Yuta and Ko live with each other. They've like become best friends, and now they're roommates. And so so I mean, what you saw on screen was basically like a real friendship playing out.
So not only you directed the film, but you directed the actors' live.
Yeah, I guess I guess so.
Such a master. You grew up in New York and you did not go to high school in Japan. So what sort of research did you do that doesn't exist, that technology, right? Is it?
No.
Okay. I got worried at some point. So can you talk a little bit about the research you did to set up it's high school, right?
Yeah, it's high school.
High school. And did you have any experience or any of the actors in being in a setting of a Japanese high school?
When I was
It's strict, but maybe not.
yeah, I mean, when I was in high school myself, would do kind of like exchange summers in Japanese high schools. So I have had like a little bit of experience, but the majority of my high school experience has been in New York. So of course, I don't really have like a embodied lived experience of what it's like to be a high schooler in Japan. I think the main kind of cast really had those embodied experiences. Shina went to an international school, but I think everybody else went to like a normal Japanese high school. And but in terms of the research, I visited my like 80s high school from when he was high, and kind of over the course of the writing period as well, like I would watch documentaries about Japanese high school and things like that. But a lot of it is kind of just knowing what it's like, I guess, like through absorbing it through just like living in Japan or the media or other kinds of stories, but also doing interviews and hearing about what it was like.
Do you have anything to add about the high school experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was in international school, so it kind of separates you from the local Japanese school, and like we interacted with them like when you did sports and stuff, but I think a part of you consuming Japanese media, like, and wanting to belong in the country that you grew up in, obviously, like, you want to be a part of this and know what it's like. So Neo, like, gave me the opportunity to kind of, like, live out a little bit of a fantasy where, like, I could be, a high schooler in Japan and feel like I'm in a community in Japan that I do belong. So in that sense, it was great. But, the other guys did go to school, and a lot of the people did go to Japanese school. So I think I can't speak on their behalf, but they probably have more prominent things to say than I do on this question.
Did you make them watch any films in particular to prepare for the film? Not the Breakfast Club, right?
No, not really. I suggested like some of my favorite films, but oh yeah, I showed them my 2 shorts in the past. But other than that, like we didn't really do prep by watching films. We kind of just did a lot of hanging out, a lot of acting exercises, and then a lot of dinners after those exercises. Yeah.
Sounds nice to be on your shoots.
Yeah. Please, anybody.
It's funny because the film is definitely Japanese, but in watching it, I felt a lot of different influences, and at that time, I felt like I'm watching a Taiwanese film. you have a lot of long shots. You have a lot of tracking that are really giving you a different atmosphere. And I was wondering what type of discussion and conversation you had with your DP when you were preparing and thinking about certain shot. There's one when he's with his mother, of course, with his mother in the streets, and it's a very, very strong scene that I really love and I really enjoyed rewatching.
Thank you. Yeah. Unfortunately, Bill couldn't be with us here, but Bill and I have been working together since one of my first short films called The Chicken, and he and I just have extremely similar references and films that we love. And a big part of it is Taiwanese films, specifically like Edward Yang's films, are a huge reference for me. So much so that on set, whenever we're thinking about what kind of a shot to get, we're trying to invoke Uncle Yang, we're trying to bring him down from the heavens. And Bill just has such a wonderful and precise eye for emotion, and always figures out the right place to put the camera in relation to what's going on. One thing that I shared both with Bill but also with a lot of my other collaborators in figuring out the stylistic element of shooting the film was to film it as if Yuta and Ko are our age, remembering their high school years. And so a lot of the shots kind of have this elliptical quality where sometimes when you're having a fight with someone, for example, you skip time and you don't realize how you got into that fight, or and the same was with our composer Leah. We really talked about kind of treating it almost like a memory, and so whenever for example, a really happy thing is happening in the scene, if you're remembering it with retrospect and you know how the film or the story is going to end, then all of a sudden those happy scenes are not very happy anymore. They're kind of melancholic. And so I think Leah did a fantastic, Leah's here too, all the way in the back over there. The soundtrack is coming out soon. So, that's the kind of, I think that's what gives the film a sort of a nostalgic feeling to it as well.
Yeah, completely, because you see the sort of present and looking back, but in a fuzzy type of distancy, and you feel the nostalgia at the same time as you're watching it moving forward, and it's a very special feeling when we're watching this. Were you crazy in high school? Did you pull any stunts with cars?
I think I was a pretty good kid in high school. I don't know.
From?
A bunch of my high school friends are here, actually.
Brought your fan club too?
Yeah, I guess I did. No, I think I would say I was pretty good. I feel like I had a rebellious spirit, but kind of acted pretty good. And maybe part of that kind of has to do with, or fed into my admiration for the rebels in the films that I watched. But then in university years and afterwards, I would go to clubs and stuff, But
Okay, so
not
high school and the college.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I also love the Rebel Without a Cause references and the Nicre admiration that can be transcribed without being too obvious, and it brings.
No, Rebel Without a Cause is definitely a huge reference of mine. I really love Nicholas Ray's films.
But yeah, and the character of the girls as well are very Nicre, because they're present and around, but never in the front line like this. I think we have time to take some audience question, and we probably have microphones. Yes. So I see someone here, and then someone in front after.
Yes. First of all, thank you again for your whimsical and bravery, not just filmmaking, but also statement. yesterday when I went to go see a showing of Stranger Eyes, I'm not sure if you were there as well, but director Yo talked about COVID and how people's sentiment about security and safety has changed since then. Knowing that your film is also falling on that subject, would you agree, or would you say just that the security and just overall, just security overall has just been changed?
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking me, how COVID has affected the content of the story of the film, but surprisingly, it didn't for me. I had been, as Florence said, I had been writing this film for a really long time, 7 years ago. And the thing that influenced my thought behind the film was actually an incident that happened in Japan in 1923. On September 1st, there was a big earthquake, one of the most devastating earthquakes in kind of modern Japanese history, I would say, and that caused a huge fire, and hundreds of thousands of people died in it. But often kind of erased part of that history is that this earthquake led to the massacre and genocide of Zainichi Koreans. There were these horrible rumors that went around that were spurred on by both government officials, but also police. There was an emergency kind of decree, state of emergency that was passed, and these bands of vigilantes in Japan went around killing Koreans if they couldn't pronounce a certain phrase, for example. But along with that, also some Chinese people, disabled people as well. And so this was a really dark history within Japan that really stems from colonialism. And when I was beginning to think about the first inklings of the film, which was around 2015-ish, there were a lot of very virulent racist hate speech marches that were happening against Koreans as well. And so I was realizing that that kind of colonial resentment that Japan hadn't gone away at all. In fact, it's still very present. And then whenever you go back to Japan, you're always reminded of this fact that another big earthquake is coming, kind of like LA. And so the beginning of the film and the thought process of it really began with this experiment. Like, if we hadn't looked back on this Japanese history of colonial aggression and another earthquake came, could something similar happen? And unfortunately, like, the trend in Japan is very negative. There are these really racist vigilantes forming again, and people are talking a lot about like foreigner crime and stuff like that, even though statistically it's like untrue. And so those are the things that are in the backdrop of the film. I don't know if it's like, as present. I think if you know a lot about the history, maybe you can pick up on those things. But that was like one of the motivations of making it, but I didn't want that to be the like main topic of the film, really. It was just kind of in there, in the fabric of my thought.
It's true, the idea of surveillance was very strong in Stranger Eyes. And it's interesting to see a different approach to it. But you're doing a talk with him tomorrow?
Yeah, I need to watch the film, actually. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
But I've heard a lot of great things about it. And a lot of people do point out the similarities, but I want to say that the kind of surveillance that I'm sort of intuiting or like thinking about is more an extension of the control that a country has to impose on immigration to like define its borders, rather than like the kind of contemporary surveillance, which is, I think, very related, but maybe a slight nuance difference there.
maybe we'll do a talk on surveillance as well.
Yeah, maybe.
There was someone who raised their hand just before. Yes, right here. With a cream top, maybe? Yes.
Thank you very much for the film, as well as being with us today. You said you have started to write script 7 years ago, and you worked on the film 4 years, and the casting took long process. What else was really taking the time to work on this one film in terms of, is it your internal processes or the environment? A lot of things happened since 2015 to today, including a lot of armed conflict and, you know, humanitarian issues. Or more the external things which are affecting your internal thinking and creating process, or more logistics or other inevitable things?
It was more logistical because this was the first script that I'd ever written. I wrote this before any of my short films and any of my documentaries that I've made, and so no one funds a person who's doesn't have any short films or anything. And so, you know, I had written it, and then after having written it, I'd realized I needed to kind of prove myself as a filmmaker, and so I started making short films. And over the course of doing that, I had been applying to different labs and workshops and things like that to brush up the script, and I'm glad that it took that long because I needed the kind of feedback and opportunity to be able to like rewrite. So it was more logistical. Like I think if I magically was able to 7 years ago, I might have, and that probably would have resulted in a worse film, or at least a very different film. So I'm glad that it took a long time, but it was more logistical, I would say.
There's a question over there.
Hi. This time when we have all these competing screens, I'd like to know as a filmmaker what considerations you had in making your film cinematic, and what are the considerations economic? What were you willing to try cinematically that would be distinguishing your work as a cinematic work? And then second to that question is, you mentioned Edward Yang and Nicholas Ray as influences. What are some contemporary influences that shifted your experience from being a passive film watcher to a more assertive film voice?
That's a hard question. I guess the one thing that I was thinking about was, I don't know, I have a really structural mind, and I don't really want to say this, but I guess the way that I broke down the shots and scenes were very meticulous on like spreadsheets. And so, you know, I always had this idea of trying to do at least 2 or 3 things for each scene. One is to just tell the raw emotional like plot, like the plot of it. 2 is to kind of have our authorial perspective on how to show that plot. So it's talking about these like, what I was mentioning earlier, which is like to treat the story as if Yuta and Ko are remembering it from like when they're 33 years old, for example. And then the third thing I always had in mind was to do something with each scene that I always called like having some cinematic delight. And that could be like a joke, or it could be just like a composition of the frame or something like that. But there was something that I always wanted to do which just kind of would like tickle my eyes. And so I guess that's the thing that I wanted to do cinematically with this, that I don't know if it distinguished me, but I tried. And what was the second question? Contemporary directors, influences. Contemporary influences, I mean, I watch a lot of old movies, but I just watched Vietnam, which is in this festival, which was incredible. And I'll probably go back to watching it, and it's just a fantastic, like a masterpiece. So that'll probably be a reference of mine going forward.
Thank you for pitching other films and other filmmakers in the festival, of course.
Please go watch it. It's really great.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but it was really great to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your film. Thank you for being here, Shina. And
you.
You're back tomorrow.
Yes.
To show the
Second
film
screening.
and to discuss
Yeah.
new Asian cinema.
Oh,
among
yeah, the
other
talk.
things.
Yeah, that's
and,
true.
And surveillance, probably.
That's true. Yeah, I'm doing a talk with the director of Vietnam and Stranger Eyes for tomorrow, and then second screening. So
And then you can pitch other movies in the festival.
yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
for being here. Thank you.